4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. Introduction. The Limit Embracing Life. If you live to be 80, you'll have had about 4,000 weeks. That's not a comforting number. In fact, when you first do the math, it can feel like a slap in the face, an existential countdown clock reminding you of just how little time you really have. But the point of this book is not to unsettle you. It's to suggest that this stark fact, that our lives are finite, that our time is limited, isn't a problem to solve. It's the starting point for a better, more meaningful way of living. Modern life teaches us to treat time as something to dominate, to master, to optimize. Productivity systems, life hacks, color-coded calendars, 5 a.m. routines. These are all part of a larger cultural delusion, the idea that if we could just get our lives under control, we could finally relax, finally arrive, finally live. But we never do. There's always more to do. The to-do list never ends. And the more efficient we become, the more we fill that space with new demands. It's like trying to outrun your own shadow. But what if the problem isn't that you're not getting enough done? What if the problem is thinking you ever could? This book is about reclaiming your life from the tyranny of endless productivity. It's about confronting your limits head-on, not as weaknesses to be overcome, but as truths to be lived with. When you embrace the fact that you can't do everything, can't meet every obligation, can't become the perfect version of yourself you imagined in your 20s, you're finally free. Free to choose, free to focus, free to be present in the short and precious time you actually have. This isn't a time management book in any conventional sense. You won't find quick fixes or systems for squeezing more into your day. Instead, this is a book about rethinking your entire relationship with time. It's about shifting your focus from how to use time efficiently to how to use it meaningfully. It's about learning to be at peace with what you can't control and showing up fully for what you can. In the pages that follow, we'll explore how our most common beliefs about time are not only misguided but damaging, and we'll look at practical, philosophical, and deeply human alternatives. We'll ask uncomfortable but necessary questions. What are you avoiding by staying busy? Whose goals are you really working toward? And what would it mean to make peace with never getting everything done? Because you only get 4,000 weeks, give or take. The choice is yours. Spend them in a futile race against time, or begin, finally, to live. Chapter 1. The Efficiency Trap. You probably don't need to be told that you're busy. Your calendar already knows. So does your inbox. So do the piles of laundry, the growing number of unread books, the messages you haven't responded to, and the quiet but insistent feeling that you're falling behind in some way, even if you can't quite name what it is you're behind on. To cope, you do what you've been taught. You try to get more organized, you declutter, you batch tasks, you buy a second monitor, you read blog posts about Inbox Zero, and you toggle between apps designed to help you remember, schedule, or prioritize the things you've forgotten, unscheduled, or deprioritized. And for a short while, it works. The decks are cleared. The air feels thinner, lighter. Maybe you even catch up. But then something strange happens. The moment you carve out a bit more breathing room, the space fills itself. New obligations arrive. New tasks are added. The emails respond to your responses. The goalposts move and you're back where you started. Except now you're more efficient at running in circles. This is the efficiency trap. The more efficient you become, the more tasks you can take on, and so the busier you get. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. Like a treadmill that accelerates as soon as you find your rhythm, your competence breeds more demands, not fewer. Oddly, this is often treated as a kind of personal failure, as though if you just found the right time management system, or just started waking up at 5 a.m., or just bought a better planner, you'd finally catch up. But what if the problem isn't your method? What if the problem is the entire premise? Modern time management, at its core, is a delusion of control. It encourages the fantasy that you might one day be able to wrangle the chaos of life into neat rows, that if you could just stay on top of your schedule, answer every email, meet every demand, and optimize every moment, you'd finally earn the right to relax. But life doesn't work that way. The irony is that many time management systems don't reduce anxiety, they deepen it. They create the illusion that you're failing at something you were never supposed to master in the first place. You were never meant to do it all. There is no version of existence where you reach a point of total completion. The inbox will always refill. The world will always make more requests than you have the hours to satisfy. There is no arrival. To fully appreciate the implications of this, consider a truth that's so obvious it's easy to ignore. You will never get everything done, ever, not even close. No productivity guru, no app, no notebook meticulously divided into quadrants will change that. And yet, something remarkable happens when you stop trying to fight this reality and begin to accept it. You're suddenly free. Free to choose what actually matters, because you must choose. Free to stop chasing after the fantasy of total control and begin living a life that acknowledges its own limits. Free to stop doing more and start doing what counts. The philosopher Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." That may be true, but it's only half the picture. Yes, we waste time, but we also operate under the mistaken belief that if we could stop wasting it, we'd have enough. The reality is we never had enough to begin with. And once we see that clearly, we can stop treating time as a problem to be solved and start treating it as the place where life happens. So instead of asking, "How can I get everything done?" perhaps a better question is, "What is truly worth doing, given that I never will?" Chapter 2. The Limit-Embracing Life. Most of us don't like being told we can't do something, especially when it comes to time. We don't like limits. We've grown up in cultures that encourage ambition, expansion, optimization. We've absorbed the idea, often without realizing it, that we should always be striving to do more, be more, fit more in. And if we can't? Well, that just means we haven't found the right system yet. But here's the inconvenient truth. You are limited. Not in a motivational poster kind of way, not in the sense that you just haven't believed in yourself hard enough. I mean in the blunt mathematical sense. You have a finite lifespan. You have limited energy, limited attention, limited control over events. There are things you'll never get to do, places you'll never visit, people you'll never become, and, crucially, you have to make choices. This isn't nihilistic, it's simply the condition of being human, and paradoxically, it's also the gateway to living a truly meaningful life. The problem isn't that we're limited. The problem is that we've been taught to view our limitations as obstacles to be overcome, rather than features of life to be embraced. Our discomfort with finitude drives most of our anxiety, our overcommitment, our habit of saying yes to everything and then resenting all of it. It fuels our addiction to productivity. It's the voice that says, "If I just try a bit harder, I can fit it all in." But you can't, and that's okay. Let's pause here for a moment to consider something radical. What if being limited is what makes life worth living? Consider this. If you had infinite time, infinite energy, and infinite capacity, nothing would have weight. No choice would matter. You could delay every decision, ignore every opportunity, scroll past every moment, knowing you could always come back to it, but you can't. And it's precisely this constraint that imbues your decisions with urgency, shape, and meaning. The fact that time is running out is what gives it value. We often think we're anxious because we don't have enough time, but more often, we're anxious because we haven't made peace with the reality of how little time we have. And the more we try to deny that fact, by multitasking, overfilling our calendars, saying yes to everything, the more time slips through our fingers. In this way, our efforts to feel in control of time become counterproductive. We start treating life like a problem to be solved, rather than an experience to be lived. We chase the fantasy that one day we'll find the right balance and finally be calm, caught up, and capable. But that day never comes, and in the meantime, we miss the only time we ever really have: now. Embracing your limits doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try or work or plan. It means recognizing that you will never have time for everything, and so the only sane response is to choose carefully, to live deliberately, and to stop pretending otherwise. It means letting go of the illusion of control, and instead developing the courage to confront the truth of your finitude. Because in that truth is a kind of freedom, the freedom to stop striving for the impossible and to start investing deeply in what you can actually do. This book is not about resignation. It's about liberation, about finally stepping out of the hamster wheel of productivity and realizing you were never meant to do everything. You were meant to do a few things with love, with clarity, and with presence. You can't conquer time, but you can stand inside it, fully alive. Chapter 3: Facing Finitude. There's a reason people prefer not to think too hard about death. It's not only that death itself is unsettling, it's what death represents, the ultimate non-negotiable limit. No amount of effort, planning, or productivity can outmaneuver it. It's the end of every to-do list. And yet, it hovers behind all of them, silently shaping how we live, or fail to live, in the time we have. Our finitude doesn't begin when we die. It defines every moment we're alive. And still, we resist it, we deny it. We build entire lifestyles, even identities, around the illusion that we are somehow exempt. We say yes to too many things because we don't want to confront the finality of choosing. We chase future versions of ourselves that always seem just out of reach. We procrastinate not because we're lazy, but because we're afraid that once we start the thing, we might discover we're not good enough, or worse, that it won't be enough. We postpone life into the future, imagining a time when we'll finally be ready, have more time, feel more confident, be less overwhelmed. But there is no future version of you that lives outside of the constraints you face now. There is no parallel timeline in which everything lines up, and you finally become the person who can do it all. There is only this version, the one who gets tired, who makes trade-offs, who is, at every turn, limited. The real cost of avoiding your finitude isn't just stress. It's that you never fully show up for your actual life. You skim the surface, trying to hold on to all possibilities, and end up engaging deeply with none of them. You become, in effect, a ghost in your own existence, always hovering somewhere else. In the next task, the next milestone, the next optimized version of yourself. Here's the paradox. When you stop resisting your limitations, you don't shrink, you expand. When you accept that you'll never read all the books, never travel everywhere, never meet every expectation, then you can finally choose what to give your time to. You gain the ability to be present in your choices, because you understand the stakes. Every decision becomes real. Every yes carries weight. And with that weight comes meaning. In the same way that you can't fully love someone until you accept that they will one day die, you can't fully inhabit your own life until you accept that you will not get to do everything. And in that discomfort, even grief, there is something sacred. You're no longer living under the fantasy of infinite time. You're living inside your one short, astonishing, heartbreakingly beautiful life. This is not the mindset of defeat. This is what radical presence looks like. But to get there, we have to mourn a little. Mourn the person we thought we'd become. Mourn the things we now know we'll never do. Mourn the future selves we must now lay to rest. This is the quiet grief of adulthood, the slow realization that to live is to miss out on countless other versions of life that will never be. But then, and only then, comes the gift. When you make peace with your limitations, you start making real choices, not reactive ones, not fear-based ones, not default settings. You stop living by borrowed ambitions. You begin to build a life that's yours, not in the sense of control, but in the sense of truth. The question, then, is no longer, how can I fit more in? The question is, what will I choose to give my 4,000 weeks to, knowing I must choose? Chapter 4. Becoming a Better Procrastinator. If modern productivity culture had a list of deadly sins, procrastination would be near the top. It's something we're taught to loathe about ourselves, something we hide or confess with a tone of embarrassment. We think of procrastination as a kind of moral weakness, a personal failing that, if only we had more willpower or better habits, we could eliminate entirely. The underlying assumption is clear. The goal is to overcome procrastination once and for all, to cleanse ourselves of it and become perfectly efficient, relentlessly forward-moving machines. But you're going to procrastinate. You always will. In fact, you are procrastinating right now, reading this book instead of doing something else you could have been doing. This is not necessarily a problem. It may, in fact, be the point. Procrastination is not a character flaw. It is, at its core, a necessary result of being finite. There are far more tasks you could do than you ever will do, and so you will inevitably leave many of them undone. You are already procrastinating on almost everything: the unread books, the half-formed ideas, the plans not yet acted on. And that's not a mistake, it's reality. The question, then, is not how to stop procrastinating. The question is how to do it well, how to procrastinate intelligently, intentionally, and in ways that serve a meaningful life rather than one cluttered by panic and guilt. Most people think of procrastination as something that happens to them, an affliction they suffer from. But really, it's a form of prioritization. Whether consciously or not, you're always deciding which tasks will receive your attention and which will be delayed, avoided, or dropped. This is unavoidable. So the more honest approach is not to suppress procrastination, but to direct it, to choose what to procrastinate on with clarity and purpose. We live under the false hope that one day we'll get on top of everything, that we'll reach the mythical horizon where all our emails are answered, our ambitions realized, our to-do lists cleared. This hope drives much of our anxiety. We feel overwhelmed not only because we have too much to do, but because we believe we shouldn't. That if we were just better at managing our time, we could catch up and stay caught up forever. But the inbox refills. The world continues to make more demands than any one person can fulfill. New ideas arise before old ones are complete. Even your own ambitions multiply faster than your ability to pursue them. There is no arrival. The idea of getting everything done is not a goal. It's a fantasy, and a dangerous one. It keeps you frantically moving, addicted to the illusion of control, while ensuring that the things that really matter are often postponed indefinitely, waiting for the mythical day when you'll have enough time. This is why so many people find themselves late at night, finally confronting the work that truly matters, the painting they haven't started, the novel they've abandoned, the call they've been avoiding. These are the tasks that stay at the bottom of the list, not because they're unimportant, but because they matter so much. Procrastination often masks fear of failure, of judgment, of doing something meaningful and discovering it falls short. It's safer to rearrange your digital workspace or answer a dozen emails than it is to begin writing the first sentence of a book you deeply care about. This is why the key to becoming a better procrastinator is not to eliminate it, but to make conscious decisions about what you're willing to neglect. You must let things go, not accidentally, but deliberately. You will not get to everything. So which things are worth sacrificing? Many people recoil at this question because it feels like giving up. But the real tragedy lies in pretending you can do it all. That illusion is what leads people to spend their lives focused on the urgent rather than the important. You clear the decks every day, hoping that once all the small tasks are out of the way, you'll be free to focus on what matters. But the decks are never clear. The small tasks regenerate. and the work that calls to you remains untouched. Part of growing into your finitude is learning to say no, not just to others, but to yourself. You must disappoint people. You must let some projects languish. You must neglect certain relationships, hobbies, or ideals, because you cannot fully attend to everything. It hurts, but it also clarifies. Once you accept that your time is limited, truly limited, you begin to see the difference between what is merely appealing and what is essential. There's a strange freedom in this. When you stop pretending you can do everything, you're no longer bound to do anything out of guilt, fear, or social expectation. You begin to choose based on what resonates with your values, not with the world's endless demands. You may disappoint others, but you begin to live more fully within the space of what is real and possible. There is also a strange relief in the idea that your work, your productivity, your performance, none of it matters very much in the cosmic sense. The universe does not depend on you responding to every email. It will not collapse if you let an opportunity pass. This perspective, what I like to call cosmic insignificance therapy, is not depressing. It's clarifying. It reminds you that the stakes are low, even as your life remains precious. You are free to care deeply about the things that move you, not because they'll change the world, but because they're part of what it means to be you. You will never be free from procrastination, but you can be free from the shame of it. You can even harness it, use it as a compass. Often, the thing you're avoiding the most is the thing that matters the most. Instead of trying to eliminate the feeling of resistance, you can ask what it's pointing to. Why is this so hard to begin? What's at stake emotionally? What might happen if I stopped avoiding it? The irony is that the things you delay because they matter deeply are often the things that, once begun, are the most energizing. They don't drain your spirit the way busy work does. They remind you of your aliveness, your agency, your purpose. But getting there requires moving through the discomfort, the fear of imperfection, the need for certainty that never arrives. A good life, a focused, finite, meaningful life, will be a life of selective neglect. You will let people down. You will leave emails unanswered. You will watch some dreams fade. But in exchange, you will give your time and presence to what truly matters. And that, after all, is what time is for. So procrastinate. But do it well. Procrastinate on the things that don't matter. Procrastinate on perfection. Procrastinate on impressing others. Delay the unimportant. Let the noise fall away, and in the silence that remains begin, not with certainty, not with mastery, but with the fragile, beautiful act of attention. Chapter 5. The Watermelon Problem. The watermelon problem is not a term you'll find in a time management textbook, but it captures something real. Imagine trying to carry a watermelon, or better yet, 3 of them. You can't tuck them under your arm or stash them in a pocket. You can't carry them all while opening a door or sending a text. There's no elegant way to manage a watermelon. It's awkward, cumbersome, and takes up more space than you expect. But it's also real, solid, full of weight and substance. The watermelons in our lives are the big, meaningful commitments, the ones that can't be neatly slotted into an hour on a calendar or squeezed in between meetings. They're the work that matters deeply, the relationships that demand your presence, the creative projects that take years rather than weeks. They're the long walks with your child when you'd planned to answer email, the book that haunts you at the back of your mind while you rush through errands, the volunteer work, or the business idea, or the quiet time in the garden. Things with gravity, things that make life worth living. But modern culture doesn't like watermelons. It likes grapes, small, manageable units of productivity, things you can pick and eat in a moment, things that look good in a row, things that can be optimized. It's no accident that so many productivity systems treat life like a spreadsheet. They assume everything is measurable, sortable, scalable. There's no room in those systems for what's large, messy, and hard to carry. This is where the problem begins. You try to live a life that includes a watermelon or two, some real, deeply felt commitments, while also managing a schedule built entirely around grapes. And it doesn't work. You end up juggling, dropping things, feeling guilty. You end up pretending that the watermelon can wait, that you'll get to it after this busy season, or after things calm down, or after you've optimized your workflow. But the watermelon doesn't wait. It quietly sours. You can't carry it, and also carry everything else. And so you're forced into a choice you never quite make consciously. You sacrifice the thing that matters most in order to keep up with things that barely matter at all. The root of this lies in our discomfort with missing out. We live in a culture that weaponizes the fear of missing out, FOMO, and turns it into a permanent state. There's always something else you could be doing, watching, buying, learning, optimizing. Every new article or invitation or notification is a reminder that you're not doing enough, that someone else is doing more, and so the only responsible response seems to be to try to do it all, to somehow carry every opportunity, every good idea, every potential life path, without ever choosing just one. But choosing one thing always means rejecting others. That's the nature of commitment. It's also the essence of freedom. This is where we encounter the joy of missing out, not as a slogan, but as a practice. To embrace the joy of missing out is to understand, at the deepest level, that the only way to experience the fullness of something is to let go of everything else. To choose your watermelon and let the grapes roll away. This isn't easy. Every choice made is 1,000 not taken. When you choose to stay in one career, you give up the fantasy of all the others you might have pursued. When you choose to become a parent, you close off a life without children. When you commit to writing a book, you forfeit all the other projects that might have taken its place. This can feel like loss, and in a way, it is, but it's also a relief. You no longer have to carry the crushing burden of infinite possibility. You get to live inside a single life, which is the only kind anyone has ever had. The mistake is to imagine that the pain of missing out means you've made the wrong choice. On the contrary, it's a sign that you've made a real one. All meaningful choices involve exclusion. If a decision doesn't hurt a little, it probably wasn't serious. Yet, much of modern life conspires to keep us from choosing. We're encouraged to keep options open, to hedge, to multitask, to delay commitment in the name of flexibility. We build lives that are wide but shallow, full of things we're kind of doing but none we're deeply inside of. We live like browsers with too many tabs open. No single one ever loads completely. But a human life is not a web browser. It is narrow and deep, or it is not much of anything at all. The greatest joys do not come from dabbling, but from immersion. To love someone, to raise a family, to master a craft, to build a community, these things take up space. They are watermelons. You can't wedge them into the margins. You must carry them with both hands, and that means dropping what you thought you needed to carry before. Still, we resist. Even when we say we want depth, we cling to width. We fill our lives with low-intensity commitments, not because we love them, but because they're easier to explain. It's easier to say yes to the committee meeting or the weekend workshop than to face the void that opens when you finally clear a space for something meaningful and realize you must now begin. We fill time to avoid depth. We stay busy to avoid risk. We carry grapes because they're easier, even if they leave us hungry. But the truth is, you only get a few chances at depth in a lifetime. A few people you'll truly know. A few things you'll do well. A few moments that will shape the rest of your story. And none of them will happen by accident. They will only come if you are willing to miss out on everything else. This is the quiet revolution of the joy of missing out. It's not glamorous. It doesn't get you applause. It often looks, from the outside, like you're doing less. But inside, you're doing more than ever. You're fully engaged, fully committed, fully alive. And there is no productivity system that can do this for you, no scheduling app that can make these choices, no color-coded planner that can carry the weight of meaning. Only you can do that. Only you can put things down and decide deliberately what to carry. So put down the grapes. Pick up the watermelon. Let it be heavy. Let it be enough. Chapter 6. The Importance of Doing Nothing. It's strange how difficult it has become to do nothing. In a world constantly vibrating with notifications, streaming content, and dopamine-sized chunks of productivity, the act of doing nothing, of truly doing nothing, feels unnatural, even irresponsible. We reach for our phones in queues, scroll mindlessly while waiting for a friend, fill every silence with noise. We are not accustomed to simply being where we are. We've come to believe that value is tied to visible output, that a good day is a productive one, and that to rest is to fall behind. Even leisure has become performative. Walks become fitness goals. Reading becomes self-improvement. Hobbies are monetized. The very idea of wasted time is now treated as something vaguely immoral. But the truth is, you are a human being, not a machine. You are not designed to be maximally efficient. And much of what makes life rich and bearable, creativity, insight, connection, emerges not from relentless effort, but from space, from boredom, from stillness, from what looks on the surface like idleness. There is a reason some of your best ideas arrive in the shower, or on long walks, or just before falling asleep. It's not magic. It's that your brain needs room to wander, and you rarely give it that room anymore. In the constant noise of doing and checking and responding, there is no silence in which the deeper voice of intuition or imagination can be heard. The mind, like a garden, needs time to lie fallow. The soil must rest for anything real to grow. But our culture finds this intolerable. Rest feels unearned unless it's framed as recovery for future productivity. We don't stop because we've done enough. We stop only because we've run out of energy, and even then we feel guilty for it. We take pride in how exhausted we are. We wear busyness like armor. This addiction to doing comes from the fear that if we stop, something bad will happen. We will be exposed as lazy. We will miss something important. We will become irrelevant. But underneath these rationalizations lies something deeper, the fear that if we stop, really stop, we'll have to face ourselves. Silence brings things to the surface, the unresolved, the unanswered, the truths we've been dodging through motion. This is why doing nothing feels uncomfortable, not because it's unnatural, but because it is intimate. You are suddenly alone with your own experience. And yet, this is where life actually happens, not in the curated feed or the polished email or the back-to-back Zoom meetings, but in the moments when nothing is expected of you, when you are simply present, unproductive, and alive. To recover this presence requires something radical, a willingness to resist the pull of utility, to do something or nothing for no reason other than the fact that it is. Sit on a bench and stare at a tree. Lie on your back and look at the ceiling. Let a cup of tea go cold while you stare out the window. Don't optimize it. Don't capture it. Don't use it to refuel. Just be there. What you'll notice at first is discomfort, a kind of psychic twitch. Your mind will reach for a task, a distraction, a notification. You'll feel the urge to get up, to scroll, to prove that you're not wasting your life. But if you stay, even for a few minutes, something shifts. You start to remember that there is a deeper rhythm inside you, a slower one, a rhythm that doesn't care about inboxes or goals or what everyone else is doing. This is the rhythm of actual life, and it moves in moments, not milestones. You begin to see that not everything needs to be done, that many of your tasks are self-invented or ego-driven or designed to impress people you don't even like. You begin to see how much of your activity is noise and how silence clarifies. The idea that rest is passive is one of the great lies of the modern world. Doing nothing is not easy. It is a skill, a discipline. It is the art of stepping outside the economy of attention and reclaiming your own mind. Not to monetize it, not to shape it into a brand, but simply to dwell in it. And once you've felt that, even briefly, it's hard to unfeel it. It's hard to go back to the treadmill of busyness without recognizing that most of it is theater. You don't need permission to stop. You don't need to earn rest. You are allowed to be a person whose worth is not measured in output. You are allowed to take up space, to waste time, to breathe and not explain yourself. The philosopher Bertrand Russell, in his famous essay In Praise of Idleness, argued that modern civilization would benefit enormously if we took leisure seriously, not just as recovery, but as a central part of a good life. And he was right. The problem is that leisure has been hijacked by the same productivity mindset it was meant to balance. Now we rest in order to return stronger. We meditate to become more efficient. We take breaks so we can grind harder. But this is not rest. It is strategy, and it keeps us stuck in the same paradigm we are trying to escape. Real rest does not serve anything else. It is not a means to an end. It is an end. It is what your body, mind, and soul require to function in a human way, not in an optimized, industrialized way, but in a gentle, finite, tender one. The human animal was never built for constant motion. There are limits baked into you. You can override them for a while, of course. You can push and hustle and burn the candle down, but the bill always arrives. It arrives as burnout, as numbness, as creative block, as illness, as disconnection. It arrives in the moments when you finally stop and realize you don't remember why you started. It arrives when your calendar is full and your spirit is empty. You don't have to wait for that. You can choose now to make space, not as a tactic, not as self-care, but as a quiet rebellion, as a way of saying, I will not let the world decide what my time is for. I will not reduce myself to a task machine. I will not miss my own life because I was too busy trying to earn it. This is what doing nothing offers you, not an escape from life, but a re-entry into it. The irony is that once you do, you often find yourself more creative, more focused, more awake. But that is not the point. The point is to remember what it feels like to exist without needing to justify that existence. To walk slowly, to look closely, to live gently, and to know in your bones that this right here, this moment of unproductive presence, is not a detour. It is the destination. Chapter 7. Rediscovering Rest. There was a time when rest wasn't something you had to earn. It was simply part of life, a natural rhythm. The sun went down, and so did you. Fields were worked during the harvest, then left fallow for seasons of recovery. Even the ancient idea of the Sabbath, whether taken religiously or not, acknowledged something profound, that time wasn't just for doing, it was for being, and being required stopping. But in the modern world, rest has been rebranded as a resource, something to be managed, tracked, optimized, something you recover in order to return stronger, to hustle better, to hit the next milestone. We rest, not for rest's sake, but for productivity's sake. We're told to sleep more, to breathe deeply, to take micro breaks, because these things make us more efficient at our jobs. This is not rest. It's maintenance. It's the oil change before the engine revs again. True rest has become almost subversive. It doesn't make you richer. It doesn't impress your manager. It won't get you followers. And it asks you to stop, not for 5 minutes, not to recharge, but to stop without purpose or performance. To stop because you are human and finite, because you are not a machine, because stopping is part of being alive. But this kind of rest is hard, not just because the world resists it, but because we resist it, It confronts us with an identity problem. If I'm not working, not accomplishing, not being useful, who am I? The discomfort we feel in moments of stillness is not boredom. It's the jarring realization that we've come to see ourselves primarily through what we do, what we produce, how busy we are. Rest then becomes not just a break from work, but a reckoning with who we are beneath the work, and many of us are not ready to face that. Which is why we fill our days, even our supposed downtime, with low-grade activity. We relax by consuming content, scrolling, binge-watching, always plugged into something. We call it unwinding, but our minds rarely unwind. They hum like engines left running in the driveway. The noise is softer, but it's still noise. The rest we really need is deeper than that. It's not just absence of movement, it's absence of pressure, of striving, of needing to be anywhere else than where we are. It's the moment you sit by a window and realize you don't need to check your phone. The hour you lie in the grass and let your thoughts wander with no intention of corralling them. The walk you take without measuring your steps or logging your pace. It is useless, and that is its gift. There's a kind of trust required to rest like this. A trust that the world will not collapse without you. That your worth will not diminish in the hours you do nothing useful. That life can still hold you even when you're not holding everything up. This trust is not easily cultivated in a society that prizes the illusion of control. You're supposed to be the master of your fate, the architect of your time. You're supposed to manage your hours like a CEO manages assets, efficiently, profitably, with measurable outcomes. But what happens when time stops behaving? When plans fall apart, when energy disappears, when your mind goes soft with fatigue and your body simply refuses to cooperate? In those moments, you are not failing. You are being reminded of the terms of your existence. You are not here to keep pace with a machine. You are here to live a life, and lives have seasons. Some are active, some are still. Some are harvest, some are fallow. Some are for pushing forward, and some are for letting go. Rest is not a disruption of the plan, it is the plan, or at least part of it, built into the design. One of the cruelties of modern time culture is that it has turned exhaustion into a badge of honor. We admire the burned-out executive, the sleep-deprived founder, the always-on parent. We tell ourselves these sacrifices are temporary, that rest will come later, when things calm down, when we finally catch up. But later never arrives. The work expands, the pace accelerates. The promise of rest becomes another task deferred. To rest meaningfully, we have to stop waiting for permission. We have to declare, unilaterally, that we will rest now, even if our inbox isn't empty, even if someone else is disappointed, even if the voice in our head says we haven't done enough yet. We have to begin treating rest not as an escape from reality, but as a return to it. There's something ancient and sacred in the act of stepping back. Call it Sabbath, or stillness, or retreat. It is a way of aligning yourself again with the truth of your limits. It reminds you that time is not something you own. You are immersed in it, carried by it. You do not control it, and that's okay. When you rest, you're not falling behind. You're falling back into rhythm. You're rejoining the pulse of life, a pulse that has room for slowness, for softness, for simply being. There's a reason the best moments of our lives so often happen in the in-between. The late afternoon sun drifting through a window. The long, aimless talk with a friend. The walk taken with no destination. These are not breaks from real life. They are real life. Everything else, the busyness, the ambition, the performance, is scaffolding. And if you never stop, you never touch the life beneath it. But to rediscover rest is not just a private act, it is also a quiet kind of rebellion. In a world that tells you to be useful, you become still. In a system that demands your attention, you withdraw it. In a culture that monetizes your every waking moment, You spend your time in ways that generate no value except to your soul. This rebellion is not loud. It doesn't require protest signs or manifestos. It can begin in the smallest of refusals, turning off your phone, saying no to one more project, taking a nap on a Tuesday, trusting that the world will continue without your constant vigilance, and trusting that you will not vanish in the stillness. You will become more yourself. Rest is not absence. It is presence, undistracted, unhurried, unapologetic. It is the spaciousness in which real life grows. You do not have to wait until the end of your to-do list to rest. You do not have to earn the right to exist. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be, not because it makes you more productive, but because you are here. Because this is your life, and it does not need to be proven. It only needs to be lived. Chapter 8. We never really have time. You never really feel like you have time, not in the way you're told you should, not in the sense of relaxed abundance, of days wide open and hours stretching out before you like an empty highway. Most of the time, you're moving fast, trying to get through things, trying to squeeze in something else. Your relationship with time feels more like a chase than a possession. It's always out ahead, just slightly beyond your reach. And whenever you try to catch up, by getting things under control, clearing the inbox, rearranging the calendar, it only seems to slip further away. The idea that we have time is deeply embedded in how we talk, how we plan, how we live. We speak of making time, spending time, saving time, as though time were a commodity, something you could put in a drawer and pull out later, something you could own. But you don't really have time, not in any reliable or useful sense. You can't store it. You can't accumulate it. You can't hold it in your hands and decide what to do with it later. Time moves, whether you're ready or not, and it's always moving through you. The sense that time is something you lack, that you're always running out, isn't a scheduling problem. It's an existential one. It comes from a deeper discomfort with what time actually is, which is to say, life. Your life is made of time. That's not metaphor. It's literal. Time isn't something happening around you. It is you. You are a finite creature, unfolding moment by moment. The ticking clock isn't counting down to some other thing. It is the thing. And yet, most of us live as if the real living will begin later, after we get on top of things, after we fix ourselves, after we've earned enough, done enough, figured it all out. Until then, we defer our presence. We treat now as a rehearsal, as a preparatory stage, as something to be endured or optimized or traded in for some better moment that we imagine is coming. But that better moment never comes, not in the way we expect, because the future is a story. It's not a place you'll ever live. You're always living now. The idea that one day you'll be less busy, more fulfilled, fully present, it's a fantasy that postpones the only time that ever truly exists. It's easy to forget this. Modern life is built on the illusion of deferral. Everything is later, fulfillment is later, rest is later, happiness is later. We build entire lives around strategies for eventual peace, and then discover that we've forgotten how to actually live when the opportunity arrives. We've rehearsed so long that we never perform. We've spent so much time waiting for the right moment that we've missed the only moments we ever had. There's a subtle arrogance in the way we relate to time. We assume there will be more of it, that we'll have another chance, another week, another year, that the things we've postponed, the conversation, the trip, the change we keep putting off, will still be there when we're ready, but that's a story we tell ourselves to delay the discomfort of choice. Because once you accept that time is not something you have, but something you are inside of, you are forced to face a hard truth. Every yes is a no to something else. Every hour you spend on autopilot is an hour you'll never get back. Every moment of distraction, of deferral, of disconnection, it doesn't just disappear. It becomes the shape of your life. This isn't meant to induce panic. Quite the opposite. Panic comes from the illusion of control, from believing you should be on top of things, from pretending you can master the chaos if only you try harder. The deeper calm comes from surrendering that illusion, from recognizing that time is not yours to dominate, but to inhabit. You don't need to win the race. You need to stop running. This is why productivity culture ultimately leaves us feeling worse. It frames time as something external, something to be managed with the right tools and strategies. But if time is the medium of life, then managing time is managing existence, which is an impossible task. No matter how many hacks or habits you stack, you will never feel caught up. Because the very act of trying to catch up assumes that life is somewhere else, that it's waiting for you, just beyond the pile of tasks, just on the other side of this busy patch, and that assumption keeps you permanently distant from your actual life. To be clear, this doesn't mean you shouldn't plan or try or do things. Living consciously often requires structure, but there's a difference between making thoughtful choices and treating time like an adversary. The goal is not to control time, but to collaborate with it, to learn how to move with your limits instead of against them. The writer and monk Thomas Merton once said that people may spend their whole lives climbing the ladder of success, only to find it was leaning against the wrong wall. Something similar happens with time. You spend years perfecting your system, managing your hours, getting more efficient, and one day you look up and realize you've been organizing a life that you weren't really living. There's no system that can protect you from the discomfort of finitude, no schedule that can eliminate the pain of choosing, no amount of productivity that will give you more life. At best, you can arrange your time in ways that reflect your values, that express your sense of what really matters, but that arrangement has to start with the truth. You never really have time. You only ever make time by deciding what to pay attention to, what to ignore, what to embrace, and what to release. And what you make time for becomes, quite literally, the story of your life. The next time you catch yourself saying, "I don't have time," try changing the phrase. Say instead, "It's not a priority." See how it sits. Sometimes it'll sting, which is useful. It reveals the mismatch between what you claim to value and what you're actually doing. But sometimes, surprisingly, it will bring relief, because you'll realize that it's true. Not everything deserves your time. Not everything has to fit. Not everything that demands your attention deserves to get it. This is the quiet power of honesty with time. You stop pretending you're a superhero. You stop deferring your life. You begin to live inside the limits, not as burdens, but as guides. You may never feel like you have time, but you can always decide to be in time, to occupy the moment you're in with full attention, however imperfect, however brief. You can choose to let go of the fantasy of someday, and instead give yourself to the real, ordinary, unrepeatable now. And in that choosing, you discover something surprising. You were never running out of time. You were only running away from it. Chapter 9. You are here. There's a moment sometimes when you look up from the chaos of your day, the deadlines, the messages, the errands, the fractured thoughts, and feel a flicker of clarity. It may last only a second, but for that second, everything becomes still. A child laughs, a breeze brushes your arm, the light falls just so on the sidewalk, and you remember without words, this is it. This is the life you've been rushing through. Then, of course, the moment passes. The phone buzzes. The to-do list taps you on the shoulder. The rest of the world reasserts itself. But for a brief time you were here, not mentally spinning through the past or projecting into the future, but present, alive, and aware. This presence is more fragile than we realize. It doesn't come naturally in a world designed to disrupt it. You live in a society built to fracture attention, a culture that profits every time you become distracted, every time your awareness is pulled from the moment you're into a screen, a notification, a phantom elsewhere. The result is a strange kind of disembodiment. You go through your days slightly beside yourself, half here, half somewhere else, thinking of the next thing while doing this one, writing an email while listening to a podcast, watching a sunset while framing it for Instagram. Even in rest, even in joy, even in grief, there's a layer of removal, a buffer of analysis, comparison, or anticipation. You're rarely fully in your life. You're skimming it, commentating on it, trying to control it from a distance. But presence is not a bonus feature of life. It is life. You are only ever alive in the moment you're in, and yet, most of the time, you're somewhere else. This isn't entirely your fault. Modern technology, for all its usefulness, has turned attention into a commodity. Your focus is bought and sold by platforms that have a vested interest in keeping you elsewhere, in making you feel like the important thing is just beyond this screen, this scroll, this click. And so your sense of time begins to warp. Minutes vanish, hours blur. You look up and wonder where the day went. You were there, but not really. Your body moved through space, but your mind was skipping like a stone. The cost of this isn't just inefficiency. It's disconnection from yourself, from others, from reality. You begin to live more in simulations than in sensations. You know what's happening everywhere except right in front of you. To reverse this is not easy. It requires a conscious act of resistance, not against technology per se, but against the idea that you should always be somewhere else, that you should be doing more, knowing more, controlling more. Presence demands that you release that grasping, that you let go of the fantasy that life is happening later, or better, or elsewhere. This letting go is what mindfulness, at its core, is really about. Not a wellness technique or a performance booster, but a quiet commitment to being where you are, to inhabiting your moments instead of managing them, to meeting life not from above, but from within. And it is harder than it sounds, because real presence is not always pleasant. When you arrive fully in a moment, you don't just feel the light and the breeze, you also feel the tension in your shoulders, the tightness in your chest, the quiet ache of longing or grief or uncertainty. You feel things you might rather avoid, which is why distraction becomes such an appealing anesthetic. It dulls not only boredom but pain, not only restlessness but truth. But truth is the only place anything real can grow. To be present, then, is an act of courage. It is choosing to stay with what is, not because it's always beautiful, but because it's yours, because it's the only thing you actually have. Your life is not made of plans, it's made of moments, and the more you spend each one trying to get to the next, the more the whole thing slips by unnoticed. We are not taught this. From a young age, we're trained to focus on what's ahead. School prepares you for college. College prepares you for a job prepares you for retirement. And all the while, real life is happening in the cracks, in the conversations, the missteps, the quiet mornings, the unremarkable afternoons, in the things you didn't plan, didn't polish, didn't document, just lived. And to live fully requires slowing down, not in the romanticized sense of quitting your job and moving to a cabin, though that's fine too, but in the much harder sense of being willing to feel time as it passes, to stop speeding through it, to stop filling it, to let it stretch out and unfold. That might mean choosing to walk instead of drive, to talk instead of text, to look out a window instead of at a screen, to notice the person next to you, to listen not as a pause between speaking, but as an act of full engagement. These are small gestures, inconsequential perhaps, but they add up, because presence has a cumulative effect. Each time you drop into the moment you're in, you deepen your capacity to stay there the next time. You carve new grooves in your mind. You begin to remember what it feels like to be somewhere. And then, gradually, things shift. Time no longer feels like it's rushing past you. It slows, it expands. You start to notice details you'd missed. The texture of a friend's voice, the particular quality of light in the late afternoon, the way your breath moves in your body. You realize that ordinary moments are not filler, they're the fabric of your life. You may also find that your priorities rearrange themselves. When you are present, the frantic urgency of everything else fades a bit. You stop feeling so compelled to prove yourself, to keep up, to chase after what you thought mattered. Presence brings clarity. It reveals what's real, and what's real is often quiet, often simple, often missed. The hardest part, perhaps, is accepting that presence doesn't guarantee perfection. Being here won't make your life easier. It won't solve every problem, but it will make your life yours. Fully felt, fully inhabited, no longer something you're trying to manage, but something you are living from the inside out. You will forget this, of course. You'll drift. We all do. Attention slips. Distractions multiply. The mind returns to its endless loop of what's next, and what if, and what now. But you can come back, again and again. That is the practice. Not to stay present forever, no one does, but to return. To put your phone down and notice your coffee, to pause mid-task and feel your feet on the floor, to look someone in the eye and really listen, to say, with your attention, your presence, your breath, I am here. Because in the end, what else is there? Chapter 10. The Loneliness of the Digital Age. There is a strange kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from being everywhere at once. From being perpetually connected yet rarely present. From having more information, more updates, more points of contact than at any time in history, and still feeling like something vital is missing. It's the loneliness of the digital age. Not the loneliness of an empty room, but of an overfull one, where no one really sees you. Where everyone is half listening, half scrolling, half thinking about something else. It's the loneliness of conversations interrupted by notifications, of dinners held hostage by group chats, of walking beside someone you love while both of you stare into your phones. It is not the absence of people that isolates us. It's the absence of attention. Digital technology promised us connection, and in some ways, it delivered. You can talk to someone across the world in real time. You can reconnect with old friends, meet new ones, find your tribe. But there's a difference between contact and connection. One is fast and frictionless. The other is slow, messy, human. One gives you updates. The other gives you presence. And presence is the thing we're losing. The thing that cannot be replicated by pings or posts or clever emoji. Real connection requires friction. It requires time, attention, and above all, vulnerability. You can't fast-forward intimacy. You can't automate depth. You can't maintain 20 genuine friendships just because the platform lets you. You may be available to everyone, but you are fully present with no one. We're told that this is simply the way things are now, that attention is a scarce resource, that multitasking is survival, that digital life is just life. But in believing this, we've quietly begun to accept a thinning of experience, a life of constant partial presence, where we never quite arrive, never quite connect, never quite feel the people around us. And so even in a crowd you might feel adrift. Even in a group chat you might feel unseen. Even while liking dozens of posts a day, you might go to bed feeling like no one really knows what's happening inside you. This isn't just an emotional issue, it's a temporal one, because genuine connection, the kind that makes you feel grounded, known, and human, takes time. Time without interruptions. Time that isn't chopped into slices. Time in which nothing happens except being together. But the structure of digital life militates against this. It thrives on speed, on updates, on immediacy. There's always something new to check, something else to react to, and so your time is constantly being pulled away from the slow, inconvenient reality of being in relationship and into the fast, low-res stimulation of online engagement. The result is that we begin to relate to others as feeds, streams of content, curated selves, avatars to scroll past. And we begin to relate to ourselves that way too. Always performing, always curating, always managing a version of ourselves designed for consumption. The more connected we are online, the more pressure we feel to be visible, to keep the performance going, to stay relevant. But visibility is not the same as intimacy, and relevance is not the same as love. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes from constantly maintaining your digital self. You're never off stage, never unobserved. Even moments of solitude become opportunities for documentation, and somewhere in the process, you begin to lose track of what you actually feel, what you actually want, who you actually are when no one is watching. This isn't a call to abandon technology. It's a call to reclaim time for connection, to protect stretches of attention not parceled out to algorithms. It's a call to recognize that presence is a finite resource, and that if you give it all away to your screen, there will be none left for the people sitting beside you. Consider how long it's been since you truly listened to someone, not while half checking your phone, not while waiting for your turn to speak, but really listened, with full attention. Consider how often your conversations are fragmented by alerts, how often your solitude is interrupted by the urge to check, to post, to respond, how often you reach for distraction, not out of boredom, but because being fully here feels too vulnerable. The problem isn't that technology is evil, it's that it's ambivalent. It doesn't care how you use it. It just responds to the signals you give it. If you use it to avoid your life, it will help. If you use it to escape hard feelings, it will offer relief. If you use it to numb discomfort, it will never run out of Novocaine. But if you want something else, depth, presence, meaning, you'll have to fight for it. You'll have to choose to sit through awkward silences, to resist the reflexive reach for your phone, to create boundaries that make space for the slow, quiet, analog experience of actual human life. You'll have to risk missing out on what's happening elsewhere in order to show up fully for what's happening here. And that's not easy, because the moment you try, you'll feel the withdrawal, not just from the device, but from the identity it helps you maintain. You'll feel untethered, bored, insecure. You'll feel the discomfort you were trying to suppress. But if you can stay, if you can hold your ground, you may notice something else underneath. A hunger, a longing for touch, for eye contact, for presence, for the unoptimized messiness of real interaction. This hunger is not weakness. It is proof that you are still human, that some part of you still remembers what connection feels like. You don't need to delete your apps or renounce the internet. You simply need to ask yourself with honesty how you are using your time and what kind of life it is shaping. Are you building a life of contact or a life of connection? Are you chasing updates or cultivating presence? Are you sharing your thoughts or hiding behind them? Are you visible or are you known? The answers will vary. There's no formula here, but the questions matter. They are a way of remembering that time, your time, is always being exchanged for something, and no one else can decide if that trade is worth it. You only get so many moments of real connection in a life. A handful of conversations that change you. A few people who truly see you. A few nights when the talk goes late and the masks fall away. A few mornings when everything feels still and real and close. These moments are too precious to miss because a screen was asking for your attention. The world will keep trying to pull you away from yourself and from the people who matter most. But you can choose, quietly, repeatedly, imperfectly, to stay, to be here, to listen, to belong, not to a network, to a life. Chapter 11. The Patience of Meaning. We don't talk much about patience anymore, not real patience, the slow, spacious kind that's willing to endure discomfort, to wait without guarantees, to invest in things that may take years or decades to bear fruit. We talk about speed, about scaling, about getting there faster. The world teaches us that if something is worth doing, it's worth finishing quickly. That progress should be visible, that results should be measurable, that if you're not moving forward, demonstrably, efficiently, you're somehow falling behind. But most of the things that matter don't work like that. Meaning takes time. Love takes time. Mastery, friendship, grief, growth. None of these can be rushed. They don't respond to productivity systems or time-blocked calendars. They ask for something we've been conditioned to avoid: patience. The kind of patience that makes space for uncertainty. That's willing to not know for a while. That stays, even when it feels like nothing's happening. And this is deeply uncomfortable, because we're not trained for it. We've been raised in a culture that rewards urgency, that treats slowness as a flaw and waiting as wasted time. We expect answers instantly, packages overnight, replies within minutes. Our technology delivers, so we assume everything else should too. But the deepest parts of being human remain stubbornly analog. They run on ancient time. The problem is, when we forget this, we start to judge ourselves by the wrong metrics. We assume that if our work isn't producing visible results right away, it must be pointless. If a relationship hits a quiet patch, it must be broken. If we don't feel inspired or productive, we must be failing. And so we abandon things prematurely, not because they're not working, but because they're not working fast enough. We plant seeds and then dig them up the next day, wondering why they haven't sprouted. But meaning is not a harvest you can schedule. It grows in fits and starts, in seasons you don't control, and often it grows underground for a long time before you see anything at all. That's not failure. That's just how it works. To live a meaningful life, you have to resist the cultural compulsion to measure everything in short-term gains. You have to learn to sit with uncertainty, to trust slow progress, to value things that don't produce immediate results. This might mean staying with a creative project even when it feels like you're getting nowhere. It might mean staying in a relationship through a quiet or difficult period. It might mean continuing to show up, for your kids, for your work, for yourself, even when it's hard, even when there's no applause, even when you're tired of the silence. None of this will feel particularly gratifying in the moment. That's the point. Meaning doesn't always come packaged in pleasure. It often arrives disguised as boredom, repetition, or doubt. You won't always recognize it right away, but that doesn't make it less real. What we usually call patience is often just disguised presence, the willingness to be exactly where you are without rushing to escape. The willingness to stop demanding that every moment be thrilling or efficient or clearly useful. The willingness to let life unfold on its own schedule rather than yours. This kind of patience is not passive. It's not waiting around, hoping something better happens. It's active engagement with the moment you're in, even when that moment is slow or hard or confusing. It's choosing to believe that this too is part of your life, that this hour, this task, this emotion has its place in the long, mysterious arc of your story. But you'll rarely be rewarded for this, not immediately, not outwardly. The world moves on a faster timeline, and if you don't keep up, it will leave you behind, or so it seems. But in truth, most of what looks like speed is surface-level churn. You can be very busy and going nowhere. You can be moving fast and still be stuck. What actually changes you, and what changes the people around you, is not how fast you live, but how deeply you live. The patience of meaning asks you to give up the illusion that your life will make sense from the outside, that it will look efficient, impressive, or coherent. It won't. Not always, and not necessarily at the moments that count. Some of the most meaningful chapters of your life will look, from the outside, like detours. Some of the most important work you'll do will take place in silence, with no audience, no clear payoff, no guarantees. But it's still worth doing, because meaning is not an outcome, it's a way of relating to your time. When you slow down enough to be with your life, even when it's messy or uncertain, you begin to see that time is not just something you spend, it's something you inhabit. And how you inhabit it determines what kind of life you're building. Patience is the practice of honoring that life, of respecting its pace, of refusing to force it into shapes it doesn't fit. It's trusting that you don't need to have everything figured out right now, that you can be in progress, in process, in doubt, and still be living something true. This is not easy. The world is impatient. The world wants results. The world wants you to pick a lane and move fast. But you are allowed to step out of that current. You are allowed to take your time, to figure things out slowly, to let your life unfold in ways that don't impress anyone, but feel right to you. You don't have to build a legacy. You don't have to scale. You don't have to prove anything. You are allowed to do one thing at a time, to care deeply about something no one else understands, to stay when it's tempting to run, to finish what you started, not because it will go viral, but because it matters to you. This is the patience of meaning. It's not glamorous. It won't win you productivity awards. It may even make you feel like you're falling behind. But in the end, this kind of time, slow, attentive, rooted, is the only kind that has room for a real life. And when you look back, as you will one day, it won't be the fast parts that stand out. It will be the days that felt long, the hours when you stayed, the moments when you were there, fully, patiently, imperfectly, and nothing much happened except everything. Chapter 12. Cosmic Insignificance. Therapy. There's something strangely calming about standing beneath a star-filled sky. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't make your problems disappear. It doesn't help you finish your project or reply to your emails or resolve the tension in your relationships. But it puts everything back into proportion. It rearranges your sense of scale. You look up, and for a moment, you remember how small you are, how brief, how fleeting. And that can feel, paradoxically, like a relief. Because so much of the anxiety that haunts modern life stems from the pressure to matter, to make an impact, to leave a legacy, to be extraordinary, to build something that lasts. You are supposed to do something meaningful with your time. You are supposed to maximize your potential. You are supposed to make your mark. But what if you don't? What if nothing you do is remembered? What if your name never appears in a history book, your face never in a headline, your achievements never on a plaque? It's likely, and it's fine. This is what I call cosmic insignificance therapy, the practice of making peace with your smallness. Not as an excuse to give up, but as an invitation to let go of the impossible expectations you've placed on your time. To stop trying to outpace death, or justify your existence through constant achievement, or build a legacy as insurance against oblivion. You are one human being, on one planet, in one corner of one galaxy, in a universe that has existed for over 13 billion years and will continue long after you're gone. And yet, here you are, alive. This should be terrifying, but somehow it's not. Somehow, when you really face it, your insignificance makes everything simpler. It untangles the knots. You are no longer burdened with the responsibility of fixing the world, or becoming great, or proving your worth through accomplishments. You are free to do what you can, where you are, with what you have, not because it will be remembered, but because it is the next true thing. This perspective doesn't shrink life, it sharpens it. The pressure to matter in some grand, lasting way can become a kind of prison. You're always chasing something slightly out of reach, a version of yourself who is more impressive, more productive, more influential, and that chase pulls you away from your actual life, the one filled with dishes and errands and small kindnesses, and the ordinary details no one else sees. Cosmic insignificance therapy is a way of saying, this is enough. The evening you spent listening to your friend, the time you took to help your child tie their shoes, the words you wrote that no one may read, The meal you cooked, the walk you took, the moment you truly paid attention, none of it will make history. But all of it is real. We tend to think of meaning as something we have to go out and find, something big, something rare, something outside ourselves. But meaning is not rare. It's constant. It's just small. It happens at the scale of the day-to-day. It happens in conversation, in commitment, in care. And the only thing that prevents us from seeing it is the belief that it should look like something else. We tell ourselves that we'll matter once we do something impressive. But mattering isn't a status. It's a way of being with the world. And when you stop trying to inflate your significance, you begin to notice the depth of your presence. The people around you become more vivid. The tasks in front of you become more absorbing. You stop comparing your life to some idealized version and start inhabiting it as it actually is. Flawed, fleeting, enough. This shift is uncomfortable at first. Letting go of grand narratives often feels like loss. You may feel untethered, even invisible. The story you've been telling about your future may no longer hold. But what arises in its place is something more honest, a life that doesn't need to be exceptional in order to be worthwhile. The great secret is that the people who truly change the world rarely set out to do so. They were busy living. They were doing their work, raising their families, tending their gardens, building their communities. They were paying attention. And sometimes their actions rippled outward in ways they never planned. But even if they hadn't, their lives would still have mattered, because they mattered to the people near them, because they mattered to themselves, because they were lived with attention and effort and care. This is what cosmic insignificance therapy offers you, the chance to drop the burden of being special and instead focus on being real. You are not a brand. You are not a legacy in the making. You are a person in a moment doing your best. And that is a powerful thing, because once you accept that you don't need to change the world, you become more capable of changing it in small, grounded ways that start with presence, with listening, with showing up. This is not about mediocrity. It's about humility. It's about understanding that you are already a part of something vast, not because of your resume, but because you are here, because you exist, because you get to love and grieve and laugh and try, even if it all disappears. Because it always disappears. Everything is temporary. That's what makes it so precious. The great anxiety behind all our striving is the fear of vanishing, of being forgotten, of dying and taking our unlived potential with us. But that fear dissolves when you realize that life was never about becoming something. It was always about being here, with something, with each other, with yourself, with time. And that means you can stop trying to prove your life matters. You can start living like it already does. You can stop waiting for the big moment and embrace the small ones. You can stop seeking significance and start seeking connection. You can stop trying to leave a legacy and instead leave the room better than you found it. And when you forget, which you will, look up at the stars. Remember how small you are. And smile, not in despair, but in gratitude. Because the miracle isn't that you'll be remembered. The miracle is that you're here at all. Chapter 13. The Human Disease. There's a peculiar trait that defines the human condition, one that seems almost baked into our wiring. It's the feeling that we're never quite where we should be. Wherever we are, we imagine we ought to be somewhere else. Whatever we're doing, something else tugs at us. Something more urgent, more meaningful, more efficient. Even in moments of peace, there's a flicker of unease. Is this really what I should be doing with my time? This feeling doesn't arise from laziness or lack of ambition. In fact, it often afflicts the ambitious most severely. It's not a matter of not caring enough. It's a matter of caring too much, all at once, about everything. And beneath it is a fear. The fear of wasting time, of falling behind, of choosing the wrong path and regretting it forever. It's the gnawing sense that life is slipping through your fingers, and that you ought to be doing more to catch it. This is the disease of being human, the inability to rest in the present moment, the sense that there is always some other life we're meant to be living, just slightly out of reach. It manifests in dozens of small ways. You open your phone to check one thing, then suddenly it's 30 minutes later and you've absorbed nothing. You agree to a commitment you had no time for because the alternative, doing nothing, felt too uncomfortable. You spend a weekend with your family but feel vaguely guilty the whole time because you're not working, or you work all weekend and feel guilty because you weren't more present with your family. No matter what you choose, something else haunts you. This restlessness is not accidental. It's a consequence of consciousness, of knowing that time is finite and that you must spend it somehow, but never quite knowing the best way. Unlike other animals, we don't just live. We watch ourselves living. We question it. We second-guess. We compare. We imagine alternate lives, better lives, more fulfilled or optimized versions of ourselves, and then judge the one we're actually living by comparison. You can be sitting in a quiet cafe, in a beautiful city, with a warm drink in your hands, and still feel lacking, because somewhere in the back of your mind is the idea that someone else is using their time better. This is the core of the human disease, the fantasy that there exists somewhere the perfect use of time, and the fear that we are always just shy of finding it. We try to outrun this feeling with movement, with busyness, with plans and systems and schedules. If we can just get more done, we think, or find the right routine, or clear the decks completely, we'll finally feel at peace. But peace never arrives. Because the problem isn't the number of things we have to do. It's the idea that there is some final version of ourselves we are meant to become. And the idea that this version exists somewhere ahead of us, just a little further down the road, is what keeps us running. The philosopher Alan Watts once described this as the waking sleep of modern life, the state of always becoming, never being. You live as if the present is just a means to an end, as if life begins later, once everything is in place. But everything is never in place, and life is not waiting for you to get it right. What makes this so hard to accept is the deep cultural belief that your worth is something you earn. That time is valuable only when it's being used for something productive. That rest must be justified. That contentment, if it ever comes, is the reward for years of striving. But contentment doesn't arrive when the checklist is complete. It arrives when you stop trying to transcend your life and start living inside it. This doesn't mean giving up on improvement or goals or doing things well. It means dropping the illusion that these things will finally make you feel complete. They won't, and they don't need to. You can feel incomplete and still live well. The cure for the human disease is not achievement. It's not getting more done. It's not figuring everything out. The cure is attention, presence, the radical act of showing up for your life as it is, without trying to swap it for a better one. This is, of course, wildly countercultural. Everything around you suggests that you're not enough, that you should be optimizing, hustling, upgrading, that your time is only well spent if it contributes to some greater version of you. But this kind of thinking never ends, because no version of you will ever be exempt from time. Every future self you imagine, more successful, more balanced, more admired, will still be temporary, still uncertain, still finite. And when you finally reach that version, if you ever do, it won't feel like a final destination. It'll feel like you, slightly older, still wondering what comes next. So instead of chasing the imaginary self you're supposed to become, maybe you could start relating to the one who's already here. Maybe you could sit down beside that self, the tired, confused, trying their best self, and stop asking them to be more. Maybe you could ask what they need, what they love, what they're afraid of. Maybe you could treat your life not as a problem to be solved, but as a companion to be listened to. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling restless. It's part of the deal. It's the cost of knowing that time is limited. But the answer isn't to escape that knowledge, it's to make peace with it, to stop fighting against time and start moving with it, even when you don't know where it's going. You don't have to get everything right. You don't have to make every hour count. You don't have to live your best life. You just have to live this one, the only one you've got, as honestly and as deeply as you can. Which sometimes means doing less, sometimes means slowing down, sometimes means sitting with the discomfort of being in between things, or not knowing what comes next. Sometimes it means resting, not as preparation for more effort, but as a simple act of respect for your own humanity. You are not behind, you are not late, you are not failing. You are just here, in a human body, with a human mind, in a brief and beautiful and complicated life, and that is enough. It always has been. Chapter 14. Why you shouldn't try to get everything done. There's something oddly satisfying about checking things off a list. It feels like progress, control, momentum. A little hit of reassurance that you're moving forward, that you're keeping pace, that you're not falling behind in some invisible race everyone else seems to be running. And so we cling to the list. We add to it. We reorganize it. We build systems to manage it. We reward ourselves for clearing it. And if we're not careful, we begin to build our lives around it, as if the ultimate goal of existence were to get to the end of the day with nothing left outstanding. But the list never ends. It replenishes itself. The moment you clear space, more tasks rush in to fill the gap. The emails keep coming. The laundry reappears. The projects multiply. The world is not a closed system. It does not respond to your completed checklist with gratitude or closure. It simply offers more. This can feel like a personal failure, like you're doing something wrong, like you need a better app, a stricter routine, a stronger mindset. But what if the problem isn't your system? What if the problem is the very idea that you could or should get everything done? Productivity culture sells us a fantasy of completion. The idea that if you just try hard enough, work smart enough, stay disciplined enough, there will come a day when the list is empty, the inbox is zeroed, the projects are wrapped, and your calendar is finally clear. On that day, you will finally relax. You'll breathe deeply. You'll start living your real life, the one you've been postponing until everything else is finished. But that day never comes. And more than that, it's not supposed to. Because you are not a task manager. You are not a robot executing a queue. You are a person living a life. And life is not a list of things to get through. It's the space in which all those things happen. And often, it's the things that don't get crossed off that end up meaning the most. The pursuit of total completion is a form of denial, a way of refusing to accept your finitude. Because once you acknowledge that you won't get everything done, that you can't, you're forced to choose, to decide what actually matters, to let things go. And letting go is uncomfortable. It feels like failure. It feels like risk. It feels like saying no to possibilities. But it's also what makes a life. The truth is, most of us don't want an empty to-do list. We want the feeling of being in control. We want to believe that we're managing our lives well, that we're competent, that we haven't missed anything. But getting everything done is a mirage, and the chase leaves us more anxious, more scattered, more disconnected than ever. You don't need to do everything. You need to do the right things, the things only you can do in the time you actually have. This is what it means to live with intention, not to squeeze more in, but to subtract, to refuse the idea that you must be constantly productive, to accept that you are a finite person in a world of infinite demands, and to shape your days accordingly. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop measuring your day by how much you got done, and start measuring it by what you gave your attention to. Not in terms of outcomes, but in terms of presence. Did you spend your hours on things that align with your values? Were you awake to the people around you? Did you notice the details, or rush past them in a blur of urgency? These are the questions that reveal the shape of a meaningful life, not how long your task list was, but how deeply you lived in the time you had. Sometimes that means doing less. Sometimes that means disappointing people. Sometimes that means letting go of the story you were telling about what your life should look like, and embracing the one you're actually in. But there's a strange relief that comes with this honesty. Once you stop trying to do everything, you free up the space to do something real, something grounded, something that connects you to your life, rather than pulling you away from it. This might look unremarkable from the outside. You might not have the most streamlined calendar. You might not keep up with every message. You might miss deadlines or skip meetings or go to bed with things left undone. But maybe that's okay. Maybe what matters most isn't what you finish, but what you're willing to leave unfinished in order to focus on what matters. Because some of the most important things in life don't have checkboxes. You can't complete a relationship. You can't finish being a parent or a friend or a partner. You can't wrap up grief. You can't maximize wonder. You can't schedule joy for a time slot after all the real work is done. These things live outside the list. They don't respond to urgency. They require time that isn't measured in efficiency, but in depth. When you live by the list, you're always running a little behind. There's always a low-grade hum of guilt, of insufficiency. And so even when you do finish something, it doesn't bring peace. It just makes room for the next thing. But when you step off that treadmill, when you give up the chase, you start to discover a new kind of time. Time that isn't organized around utility. Time that feels wide and human, and strangely enough, more productive in the ways that actually matter. You might find that doing fewer things with more attention leads to a deeper sense of accomplishment than racing through a dozen tasks ever did. You might discover that rest, real rest, not recovery, becomes more accessible when you no longer feel the pressure to earn it. You might notice that your relationships grow richer when you're not constantly distracted by everything you've yet to finish. And you might even find that your work improves, not because you're doing more of it, but because you're finally doing the work that's yours to do, not the work you've been guilted or pressured into. Letting go of the need to get everything done is not laziness, it's wisdom. It's the clarity that comes from understanding your limits and respecting them. It's the decision to stop sacrificing your life on the altar of completion and to start living it in the only place it's ever been, right here, in the middle of the mess, with things still left undone. There will always be more you could do, but more is not the same as better. And getting it all done is not the same as living well. So make your list if it helps. Use your tools. Find your rhythms. But remember that the goal is not to cross off every item. The goal is to be here, doing what you can, with what you have, and knowing that enough was never going to be everything. Chapter 15. The Case for Settling. The word settling carries a kind of quiet disgrace. It suggests compromise, disappointment, falling short. We speak of it in hushed tones, as though to settle is to give up on the life we were meant to live. The implication is that to settle is to stop striving, to stop growing, to trade in your dreams for something smaller, duller, safer. But maybe we've misunderstood what settling actually is. What if it isn't giving up but arriving? What if settling isn't the death of ambition, but the birth of depth? The decision to stop floating through 100 possibilities and instead root yourself in one real thing. To settle means, literally, to stop wandering, to make a home, to stay in one place long enough to know it deeply, and to be known by it. It's the opposite of skimming, of perpetually refreshing, of always keeping your options open. And yet, modern life rewards the opposite of settling. It celebrates motion, novelty, expansion. It tells you to stay open, stay flexible, stay on the lookout for the next thing. There's always a better job, a better partner, a better version of yourself waiting just over the horizon, if only you don't commit too soon, if only you don't close the door too early, if only you don't settle. But the refusal to settle becomes its own kind of prison. It keeps you suspended between lives, never quite choosing, never quite arriving. You dabble in everything and dwell in nothing. You chase fulfillment through endless options, but discover over and over again that the more paths you try to keep open, the less you travel any of them. And underneath it all is the fantasy that you could live multiple lives, that if you just manage your time well enough, optimize hard enough, keep your options open long enough, you can do it all. Be it all, have it all, but you can't. You're finite. You will live one life, one set of choices, one arc of years, and every time you say yes to something, you say no to countless others. This isn't failure, it's reality. To settle, then, is not a resignation. It is an acceptance of truth. It is the moment you stop living in theory and start living in practice. It's the moment you choose this job, this city, this person, this version of yourself. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And once you do, something remarkable happens. Depth becomes possible. The surface of life is always shinier elsewhere. There will always be a new opportunity, a fresh distraction, a more exciting version of what you already have. But the deeper layers, the ones where meaning resides, reveal themselves only over time, only after repetition, only after you've stayed. You can't form deep relationships without settling into them. You can't master a skill without staying with it through boredom and plateaus. You can't experience the fullness of place or commitment or vocation without first saying, "This is enough." Not because it contains everything, but because it contains something. Something that, if tended to, if watered, if returned to, will grow into more than you could have expected. But first, you have to stop scanning the horizon for something better. Of course, settling is not always right. There are moments when movement is necessary, when leaving, quitting, changing course is the truest thing you can do. But the deeper danger in the modern world is not that we settle too soon. It's that we never settle at all. We confuse freedom with indecision. We think that more choice means more life. But too much freedom becomes weightless. It leaves us drifting, untethered, always trying to keep everything possible but never experiencing what's real. Real life is not possible life. It is actual life. It is not what you might do someday if circumstances allow. It is what you are doing or not doing right now. To settle is to stop trying to hold every possibility and finally pick up something solid, something that can hold you back. And holding back is not the same as holding you down. In fact, the more rooted you become, the more you can grow. The more committed you are to something specific, the more freedom you find within it. The freedom to go deeper, to understand more, to care more. This is not narrowing. This is becoming. The danger of a life spent avoiding settling is not just that it's exhausting, it's that it becomes invisible. You become a ghost in your own story. Always planning, never planting. Always preparing, never practicing. To settle is to choose a story, and then to live it, fully, messily, without constantly looking over your shoulder. It will not be perfect. It will be incomplete. There will be regrets. But every story has that. Every life is partial. You don't escape limitation by avoiding commitment. You just delay the experience of being human. You will always miss out on something. That's not a problem. That's the condition of being alive. And once you accept that, settling becomes a kind of wisdom, a way of saying, I know I can't have everything, so I'll give everything I have to this path, to this person, to this community, to this version of myself, not because it's the best version, but because it's the one that's here. Settling is not the end of becoming. It's the beginning of real belonging. It's the moment you realize that fulfillment doesn't come from maximizing your options. It comes from being with the options you've chosen. And in that being, meaning starts to bloom. Quietly, slowly, deeply, as it always has. Epilogue. This very moment. So here you are, not at the end of your tasks, not at the bottom of your inbox, not finally caught up or perfectly optimized or in complete control of your time. Just here, in the middle of your life. It's not all sorted. There are still loose threads, unfinished things, messages you meant to respond to, questions you don't know how to answer. There's a version of you thought you'd be by now, and a version of life that hasn't quite materialized. But maybe that's not a problem. Maybe this is it. Not the rehearsal, not the waiting room, not the warm-up, but the life you were always meant to live. Messy, limited, beautiful, finite, fleeting, fully real. 4,000 weeks, more or less. That's all you get. The point was never to conquer time. It was never to use it well in some final, moralistic sense. The point was never to do everything, to become everything, to unlock the perfect routine. The point is simply to live. To be awake for the time you do have. To feel the air on your skin and the passing of the seasons and the softness of a hand in yours. To know that you were here, and that being here, with your limitations, your longing, your failed mornings and full afternoons, was enough. The point is to stop waiting for permission to rest, to stop treating life like a list, to stop reaching for a perfect someday and begin inhabiting the one, imperfect now. And yes, the clock is ticking. It always has been, but maybe that's not a threat. Maybe it's an invitation. An invitation to stop postponing presence, to stop outsourcing your attention, to stop waiting until you're ready. You are ready. You always were. Because meaning was never going to arrive in a future where you'd finally caught up. It was always waiting, patiently, right here, in the middle of your limited, miraculous 4,000 weeks.